The first time I heard about the Miller family, it was late at night in a diner off Route 7, the kind of place where the neon lights hum louder than the customers talk. An old trucker, hunched over his coffee, leaned across the counter and said quietly, "You know about the house, right? Out by the border?" His eyes didn't meet mine, as if even saying it out loud was dangerous. At the time, I thought he was talking about one of those ghost stories towns like to tell outsiders to keep them away. Every little town in America has a legend, a haunted barn, a stretch of cursed road, an abandoned asylum. But the way his hands trembled around his mug told me this wasn't just a campfire tale. Weeks later, when I stumbled across an unmarked box of documents in the archives of the Valewood Gazette, I realized the trucker wasn't just trying to spook me. Inside the box were yellowed newspapers, missing persons reports, and at the bottom, a leather-bound journal with pages stiff from age and something darker that looked suspiciously like blood. The journal began with a single line, written in a steady but almost too neat hand. "Meat is meat. The difference is only in who dares to eat." The first missing person linked to the Miller property was recorded in 1978. A teenager named Christine Wallace was last seen walking home from a friend's house. Police at the time chalked it up to a runaway. Her family insisted she had no reason to leave, but the official story never changed. Then there was John Rourke in 1982, a salesman whose car was found abandoned on the side of the highway, the engine still running. His suitcase was in the trunk, wallet untouched. No one ever saw him again. By the late 80s, whispers about the Miller farm had begun to spread. Some said the smoke from their chimney smelled wrong, acrid and sickly sweet. Others said you could hear noises at night, not animal noises but screams, muffled and wet. From the police files, dated September 14, 1989. Case number 3384. Missing person, Emily Carter, 24. Last seen, Valewood Market, approximately 5:30 p.m. Notes. Witness reports state Carter was offered a ride by an older man in a green pickup truck. Registration traced to Jacob Miller, Valewood resident. Miller questioned. Claims to have driven home alone. No evidence found at the time. Case remains open. The deeper I read, the clearer it became that something had been buried, not just the victims but the truth itself. And then I reached the part of the journal where the handwriting changed. The letters grew jagged, frantic, almost childlike. One entry, dated November 3, 1991, chilled me more than anything I'd read before. They don't scream for long once you learn where to cut. The trick is keeping them alive just long enough. Fresh meat tastes different. Better. Warmer. I shut the journal then, my hands shaking. It was one thing to read about disappearances, another to see the thoughts of someone who might have caused them. But here's what kept me up that night. The final page of the journal wasn't dated in the past. It was dated August 12, 2007. And the entry was short. Just one sentence. "The farm is quiet now, but hunger never sleeps." That was the moment I realized, whatever happened out there didn't stay in the past. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't over. The official records about the Miller farm were sparse, almost suspiciously so. A dozen missing persons tied to the area, but never enough evidence to warrant a proper search warrant. It was as though someone, or something, wanted the truth buried. But then I found something in a forgotten corner of the county archive, a transcript from an interview conducted in 1993. It had never been filed with the main reports. Transcript excerpt. Valewood Sheriff's Department. Interview conducted, May 14, 1993. Subject, Harold Green, age 62, neighbor of the Millers. Officer, Mr. Green, you've lived next to the Millers for over 30 years. Have you ever noticed anything unusual? Green, long pause. Unusual? Hell, everything about that family's unusual. Officer, can you be specific? Green, clears throat. You ever smell meat when it shouldn't be cooking? I'm talking 2 in the morning, smoke rising up out of that chimney. And it wasn't pork. I know the smell of pork. This was different. Officer, did you ever report it? Green, hesitates, once. Back in '87. After that girl went missing. They sent a deputy. Next day, deputy quit the force. Packed up, left town. Nobody ever asked why. The file ended there. No follow-up. No explanation. But it wasn't the only piece of evidence that pointed back to the Millers. In 1999, hunters trespassing near the Miller property reported finding something half-buried in the woods. At first, they thought it was the remains of an animal, until they noticed the teeth. Human teeth. 4 of them, scattered in the dirt like loose marbles. The sheriff's office dismissed it as a prank. The official note in the file read, "Insufficient evidence to link to criminal activity." But the hunters swore under oath they hadn't planted it. One of them, Daniel Price, even testified years later. I saw hair. Tufts of it, matted with dried blood. And the ground, it wasn't dug by an animal. It was a shallow grave. Someone put something there and hoped we'd never find it. The journal in my possession confirmed these fears. One entry, written in the winter of 1994, read, "The earth is full now. We can't dig fast enough. Sometimes I wonder if the ground remembers, if it groans under the weight of what we've given it. But the hunger doesn't stop. And when you've tasted it, you can't go back." Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. A VHS tape, unlabeled, found in an evidence locker marked "Do Not Open." The footage was grainy, time-stamped July 8, 1996. At first, it showed nothing more than the Miller farmhouse, static framing, as if the camera was hidden somewhere outside. The image flickered, then shifted. Inside the kitchen, a long wooden table. On it, what looked like a body, motionless, covered with a sheet. A man, presumably Jacob Miller, stepped into frame. He pulled the sheet back. The tape ended there, cutting to static. When I brought the tape to the sheriff's department, they refused to even acknowledge it existed. One officer, his face pale, leaned close to me and whispered, "If you know what's good for you, you'll stop asking about that farm. People who go looking for answers out there, don't come back." That night, alone in my motel room, I replayed the tape again and again. Each time, I noticed more details. The glint of knives on the counter, jars filled with dark liquid lining the shelves, and in the far corner what I swear looked like a cage. And then it hit me. The final date in the journal, 2007. If the Millers had stopped in the 90s, why were there fresh entries over a decade later? The answer was terrifyingly simple. The hunger didn't die with them. The farmhouse was supposed to be abandoned. That's what every record said, what every sheriff's report insisted, what every local whispered in a half-drunken tone at the bar in town. The Millers had vanished in 1997. The property was condemned in 1998. By law, nobody lived there anymore. And yet, in 2018, disappearances began again. The first was a hitchhiker. A 21-year-old named Rachel Cortez. She was last seen getting into a pickup truck on Highway 34, less than 2 miles from the Miller farm. Her phone pinged once, a GPS signal, before it went dead, right on the edge of the Miller property. The second was a pair of urban explorers. Their YouTube channel had over 1 million subscribers, famous for sneaking into forgotten hospitals, abandoned malls, and ghost towns. They posted one last video in October 2019. Exploring the murder farm of Valewood. The thumbnail showed the two of them, grinning, cocky, standing in front of the weather-beaten Miller farmhouse. The video was uploaded automatically by their scheduling software. They were never seen again. The authorities brushed it off as coincidence. But the locals whispered differently. The Millers were back. By now, the journal had consumed me. I carried it everywhere, the pages warped and brittle, the ink smudged from my sweat. The words burned into my brain. The hunger doesn't die. It waits. It learns. It takes new hands. I knew I shouldn't, but I drove out to the property myself. Midnight. A full moon cut the clouds into slivers of silver light. The trees loomed over me, their branches snapping in the cold wind like bones. The farmhouse appeared suddenly, hulking in the distance, its windows like black, watching eyes. The air grew heavier as I walked up the dirt path. That's when I noticed the first thing wrong. The front door was ajar. Rot should have claimed it long ago, but the wood looked fresh, repaired. And the faintest glow flickered from inside, candlelight. I pulled out my phone and began to record. My hands shook. The screen jittered as I whispered. This place was supposed to be empty. Someone's here. I don't know who, but I can hear them. Because I did. Faint at first, then clearer with every step. A rhythm. A chant. Low voices in unison. Words I couldn't understand. Inside the kitchen, the table still stood. But this time it wasn't empty. Laid across it was something covered in cloth, just like the VHS tape. And standing around it, for figures. They wore masks, crude, homemade, carved from wood and painted with streaks of black. Their hands were joined. Their voices rose. The cloth twitched. I stumbled backward, hitting a loose board on the porch. It cracked under my weight, loud enough to cut through the chanting. The figures froze. Then, as one, they turned their heads toward me. The masks had no eyes. Just hollow sockets. But I swear, I felt them staring through me. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the car. My lungs burned, my legs numb. By the time I slammed the door and sped down the road, the chanting had followed me, echoing in my skull. When I looked in the rearview mirror, the farmhouse was gone. Just empty trees and darkness. But I know what I saw. And the journal confirmed it in a final entry scrawled in a shaking hand. We are not the last. We are only the beginning. The hunger spreads. I didn't sleep the night after the farmhouse. Not because I didn't try, but because every time I closed my eyes I heard them. That low, guttural chanting rising and falling like a tide. When I did manage to drift off, it wasn't rest. I'd jolt awake to shadows moving at the edge of my room, convinced that one of the masked figures had followed me home. The air felt thick, charged, as though I'd carried the curse with me. By morning I decided I couldn't keep this to myself. I uploaded the footage. The shaky video of the farmhouse, the chanting, the figures around the table. But here's the thing, when the video went live, most of the footage was gone. The porch, the doorway, my breathing? Still there. The chanting? Still there. But the figures? The table? The cloth? Deleted. Erased. As if something, or someone, had reached into my files and cut out the proof. The comments were brutal. Fake. Creepypasta garbage. Nice acting, dude. But one message stood out. It came from a private account, no profile picture, no name. Just a string of numbers. Read. We saw you. You should have stayed silent. I tried to laugh it off. A troll. A prank. But then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Attached to the message was a photo. It was me. Standing outside the Miller farmhouse. Taken from behind. Someone had been watching me. Over the next few days, the harassment escalated. Strange knocks at my door at 3 a.m. The sound of footsteps pacing outside my window. Once, I woke to find a dead crow on my porch, its wings spread out like a grotesque offering. I called the sheriff, but he only sighed. You poked the wrong nest, son. That place has been dead and buried for years. Best let it stay that way. He hung up before I could argue. By now, the journal had become my lifeline. Its entries spoke of initiations, of rituals to bind the hunger into bloodlines, of outsiders who were silenced when they came too close. They feed through us. They live when we live. To resist is to starve. The words swam on the page. My skin crawled. I realized the truth too late. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a covenant. And now I had stumbled into it. The final straw came 3 nights later. I woke to the smell of smoke. At first, I thought my apartment was on fire. But when I staggered into the living room, the air was clear. No flames. Instead, scrawled across my wall in ash and soot, were 3 words. Don't look away. I grabbed my keys and bolted. The journal under my arm, the camera in my bag. If they wanted silence, they weren't going to get it. I'd drive straight to the nearest news station, hand over everything, force the world to see what was happening in Valewood. But as I sped down the highway, my headlights caught something in the distance. A figure. Standing in the middle of the road. Wooden mask. Hollow eyes. Behind it, in the beams of my lights, dozens more emerged from the trees. They were waiting. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming on asphalt. The car skidded sideways and came to a stop inches from the figure in the wooden mask. For a heartbeat, no one moved. My headlights carved white beams through the fog, illuminating dozens of shapes just beyond the treeline. Figures in rough, hand-stitched robes, their masks pale and expressionless. I threw the car into reverse. But before the wheels even rolled, hands shot out of the darkness. Fingers clawed at the doors, the windows, the trunk. A body slammed against the hood. Another climbed onto the roof. Their chanting rose, low at first, then louder, louder, until it drowned out the engine. I floored the accelerator. The car lurched backwards, slamming into something. Someone, with a sickening thud. A figure tumbled away. The others closed in. I swerved off the road and into the ditch, mud spraying up against the windshield. Branches snapped under the tires. The headlights flickered, died. Darkness swallowed everything. When I came to, the car was still. My head throbbed where it had struck the steering wheel. The chanting was gone. Only the sound of my own breathing remained. I fumbled for my phone. The camera? The journal? Gone. The passenger seat was empty, but the door was open as if someone had been sitting there and simply stepped out. I whispered into the dark, "Who's there?" No answer. I pushed the door open and stumbled out. The night air was wet and cold, heavy with the smell of rot. Ahead of me stood the Miller farmhouse, but impossibly, it wasn't in Valewood anymore. It stood right here, deep in the woods, its windows glowing faintly. As I stared, the front door creaked open. A warm golden light spilled out. And there, silhouetted in the doorway, was a woman. At first I thought she was wearing a mask. Then I realized it was her face. It was waxen and smooth, stretched too tightly over her skull, her eyes two black pits. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. She lifted her arm and beckoned me forward. I should have run. Every nerve screamed at me to run. But my feet moved of their own accord, crunching through the leaves toward the porch. As I crossed the threshold, the house shifted. The wooden walls melted into rough stone. The smell of earth and iron filled my nose. I was underground. Rows of candles flickered along a tunnel. And carved into the walls, in some language I didn't know but somehow understood, were the same words from my apartment. Don't look away. Voices echoed from deeper within. The same guttural chanting, now joined by a rhythmic thudding like drums. I crept forward, pressing my back to the cold stone. The tunnel opened into a cavern lit by hundreds of candles. In its center stood a massive stone table, slick and dark. Around it knelt the masked figures, swaying as they chanted. On the table lay the journal. Its pages fluttered as if blown by a wind no one else could feel. One of the figures turned its head toward me. The mask was carved in the shape of a screaming face. But behind the eye holes there were no eyes. Only a void. They began to rise one by one. Their masks tilted up, focusing on me. And then the woman's voice filled the cavern, smooth and cold and impossibly close. You've been chosen. I spun to run, but the tunnel behind me was gone. Only stone, unbroken where the passage had been. The chanting built to a fever pitch. The candles flared. The masked figures closed in, their hands reaching. I backed up until my heels hit the stone table. The journal lay open before me, its pages bleeding ink that formed words over and over. We live when you live. One of them stepped forward and placed a mask in my hands. The wood was warm, pulsing like skin. I dropped it, but it clung to my fingers like tar, climbing up my arms. I screamed, clawing at it, but the chanting drowned me out. The last thing I remember before the darkness took me was the woman's face, inches from mine, whispering, "Now you belong to the circle." I woke to silence. Not the soft silence of night, but a smothering void. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of my own breath at first. When I sat up, I was lying in the middle of my apartment. The journal was on the coffee table, closed. The camera rested beside it. Everything looked normal. For a fleeting second, I thought I'd dreamed it all. Then I caught my reflection in the window. At first it was me, bloodshot eyes, pale skin, dirt still caked into my hair. But as I leaned closer, the face in the glass lagged behind. Its mouth twisted into a smile I didn't make. And then I saw it, a faint outline carved into the reflection's features, the suggestion of a wooden mask etched over my own face. The phone buzzed on the table. A notification. I hadn't had service in days. One new video. Posted from my account. I played it. The footage was shaky, filmed from the inside of that cavern. The camera turned, capturing the stone table, the masked figures, the candles. And then it focused on me. I was kneeling among them, mask on, swaying in time with the chant. My voice joined theirs. The video ended. I tried to smash the phone. Tried to burn the journal. Tried to run. But wherever I went, the park, the subway, crowded streets, they were there. Masked faces in the corner of my eye. Reflections that didn't move when I did. And always, just under the noise of the world, the chant. We live when you live. Last night, someone knocked at my door. I didn't open it. But this morning, a mask was hanging from the handle. It wasn't wood anymore. It was my face.